You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's SHRM.org.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the WorkWire, where I'm joined here by my good friend, Johnny C. Taylor Jr. Johnny, how are you doing, sir?
Well, I'm doing really, really well, Bob. It's so good to see you. It's been a while, but we've been time to go do this, right? WorkWire.
Yeah. So the WorkWire, just to start to lay a little bit of groundwork of why we're doing this, you and I had spoken a few months ago now about how do we create a podcast that allows us to address things that are very topical in the news and kind of bring what are the implications to folks, whether you're a leader, a worker, something in between. But I'd love for you just to share for just a moment what your vision for this podcast is.
Well, I'd like to say our vision, but the whole notion is that, once a week or so, we as HR professionals and frankly, people managers included, should have a moment to really reflect on the world of work. 165 million Americans go to work every day, right? And there are things that happen throughout the week that frankly make you often pause and say, why is that occurring? And that's on the employer side, out of the court side, out of the employee side. There's just so much going on. So the grand vision is for us I'm going to take some liberty and call us experts now. I dare to say both of us are experts at this work. We've been doing it long enough to kind of spend a moment and reflect on what we're experiencing as the world of work changes right before our eyes.
Yeah. And for me, because you're right, fair point. This is a shared vision. And for me, one of the things that I enjoy so much about you is your willingness to kind of get into the harder to discuss parts of topics, but it's the real world.
That's
and,
right.
and kind of our chemistry and ability to kind of back and forth on things. So I'm not going to let this be as a debate club because I don't like to lose, but
we have that in common.
But seriously, the opportunity to take very topical things that we're reading about in the newspaper, seeing on the news, we know that they're going to impact us, and just kind of helping people understand, well, what is this issue really about? And have I thought it all the way through? And therefore, how can I make the best decisions for me, my family, my workplace, whatever it might be? So,
see, Bob, you're right. Spot on. Anyone listening should understand this isn't about staking out a position or having even a point of view. It is literally exploring the topics from all angles, not one or the other, but sometimes 3 or 4 different angles. And that's critical for us. We believe that we will be smarter and better, at least from my standpoint, HR practitioners and people managers, if we have the opportunity to at least to think about the different ways that people will come to work, experience work, and in cases leave work.
Yeah. So a topic, just to kind of get this kicked off, that I think that we're both very passionate about is the notion of empathetic leadership.
Yeah.
And, as we kind of look, as emotional intelligence, comes more to the fore, as mental health comes more to the fore, and how we're supporting people at work and being supported at work and in life in general, empathetic leadership is really, really an important topic. And whether we're talking politics, we see leaders, sports, we see leaders, in just everyday life, we see people doing small acts of kindness and grace that are actually leadership. It doesn't all have to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. But I was wondering if you might, kind of open it up with just what your vision, or not your vision, but your view, kind of what's your take on what empathetic leadership actually is?
Sometimes it's easiest to define, I've found, empathy in terms of telling you what it's not, because we often conflate sympathy and empathy as a concept, which is frankly a little frustrating and is often resisted by business leaders because they think I'm supposed to lead, I'm supposed to make tough decisions. I'm not necessarily here to baby you, to coddle you, to make you feel great. Right. Ultimately, the job is empathy. And so what we do is when we speak about empathy, it's very much about just trying to see the perspective through someone else's eyes, hear it through their ears, experience things as if you were that person. That's the notion of empathy. And it is critical now. Frankly, it was always critical, Bob. You and I, when we grew up in business school, it was very much take the emotions out of it. Who cares what people think? Let's focus on the facts of the work and the work before us.
Right.
But in fact, the world now has evolved, and the worker has evolved to a point where they expect managers to at least try to understand what they're going through. You may not be a single parent. You may not be someone who doesn't have a college degree, but is trying to navigate a corporate career. But you have to understand that your employees might have those experiences and try to incorporate that into your leadership and people management style.
So keyword I heard was listening.
Yes, right. Extreme listening. Let me give you 2 words.
Oh, not a good term. What's extreme listening?
This idea, all of us you sort of listen if you can hear. And if you're fortunate enough to have the ability to hear, then you do it anyway. So people think they're listening, when in fact, extreme listening is being very intentional about literally being present and listening to what someone is saying. And in some instances, what they're not saying. That's extreme listening.
Yeah. And so, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that order.
That's right.
But also reflective listening. Like, so John, if I understand what you're saying, there's a big difference between being sympathetic and being empathetic. And so I really actually want to feel, I want to understand, I want to actually try and put myself in your shoes. Did I understand that correctly?
That's it. Spot on. Yes, sir.
So there's reflective listening, right? I just modeled how you do that. But somewhere it needs to be grounded in sincerity, authenticity. Yeah. Like, okay, I could pay lip service to it. Okay, Julie, what are you feeling? Okay, anyway, what we're going to do is, and so how would you talk to a leader about, you can't fake this. It's got to be genuine. If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it.
Well, and that's the hard thing. I say you don't have to agree with what the person is saying. A whole bunch of things run through my mind when I'm on the other side of a conversation. Mm-hmm. But if I'm busy making judgment, if I'm busy listening so that I can then speak, not listening to understand, but listening so that I can get my word in, then you're going to fail. And that's where the authenticity is. There's a lot of topics that you've raised. So this idea of authenticity could make one say, well, I'm going to listen, but authentically, this is what I feel about what you just said. That's not authenticity either, or that is at least a way of thinking about authenticity. Is I tell people, I'm going to bring my true self to work, you bring your true self to work, and none of us are going to work because we're just going to be shooting at each other, right? A manager, a professional, an HR professional, or just a people manager has to be willing to listen to try to understand authentically what that person is experiencing. And again, you don't have to agree with it, but you should at a minimum truly in your exercise of extreme listening, you've got to say, what is going on here? And I've got to remove all of my biases, all of my own preconceived notions of right and wrong to understand the experiences, right? When you do that, you can get the most out of people. This is not an exercise of, getting yourself to heaven or whatever one believes in as an afterlife. It's about getting the most out of your employees. And active listening, extreme listening, coupled with empathy will allow you to be more effective at that.
Can I put forward that I think that this flows in both directions?
That's right.
I think we can be empathetic followers too. And on another episode, I would love to explore followership with you. Yes. Because we sort of lionize leadership what does a leader need? Followers. If you don't have followers, you're just lost. You're out in front and nobody's following. But what I mean by what I was going to say just very quickly is to also understand where leadership is coming from.
Yes.
And so there's mutuality here. Yes. And it doesn't just flow in one direction. And so I may not agree with a decision as I understand it right now that came down. But if I actually came into a conversation wanting to understand, it's like, well, when you say it that way, I didn't realize all those things you were having to operate with those constraints or those pressures or whatever else might be dictating a business decision. In light of all that, oh, wow, that sounds like the fairest thing you could have done. But that requires me to listen.
That's right. No, I had something occur to me this last week. We recently promoted someone into an executive role, and this person, let's just say, never thought we were always as empathetic as we should have been as senior team members, right? But all of a sudden, when they're on our side of the table, then it's like, I know now how you feel. Before, I didn't think about it. And,
Right.
Bob, you and I have talked about this concept of not so much empathy, but mepathy. See, the problem that we have is everyone wants empathy practiced toward themselves. You're not interested in, it's like, no, I want you to be empathetic toward me. I don't have to be empathetic toward you.
Exactly.
And that's what we've seen in the workplace is employees want all of the empathy. They're not willing to give any empathy. And I'm glad on this future conversation we should have around how difficult that is, because naturally, when you realize that you want me to see the world through your eyes, but you're not prepared to see it through mine, well, then we have a problem. And I think that's led to a lot of the workplace challenges that we have today is we have not found a way to make this empathy thing mutual.
Yes. And so one of the things that I remember in a much earlier conversation you and I had was around civility and respect, and that those are the ground rules. And so empathy can also, for me, extend all the way to, I still don't understand.
That's right.
I don't, but I'm, going to believe in good intent.
That's right.
Right. And I'm going to give you, the benefit instead of, well, I don't agree with that, so I'm going to hit harder, or I'm going to strike out, I'm going to lash out, versus we can agree to disagree without being disagreeable.
That's right. And we can agree to disagree until I understand. Because sometimes really complicated issues aren't resolved in a 10, 15-minute conversation or even an hour conversation. We are evolving as human beings. We like to use the term, I'm a forever learner, or I'm, a learner for life. We use those phrases. The fact of the matter is most of us want things explained and resolved in a 15 or 30-minute period. Like I want the answer and we want to move on.
Yep.
Some of these things are really complicated. And that's what at least when in my practice, when I'm working with employees and when they're working with me and this concept of mutuality, is I say, listen, it's not that I have to make a conclusion in this 30-minute episode. I'm just listening. I'm trying to understand. I'll come back next week and ask more questions as I grapple with really subtle nuance that comes with two people interacting, typically from different experiences. So no, it's important that we say we don't just have to end this with, well, we agree to disagree. We may agree to continue talking and continue listening.
I want to, put forward a couple of examples of leaders that have been in the news fairly recently on some things, and you may have other examples, which is awesome. But when Elon Musk took over Twitter, yes. He sent a 2 a.m. email on a Wednesday, say, kind of advocating this notion of, I'm going to read it, extremely hardcore work culture, long hours at high intensity. He told, that was at Twitter, at Tesla, it was like, return to the office or you're welcome to go work somewhere else. It's like very much sounds like my way or the highway. Hey, this is what I want and need and require from you. And I'm wondering in the frame of empathetic leadership, how that strikes you.
So a couple of ways. I know you've heard me talk about this a lot in just our conversations. I'm not so sure that I believe in good or bad cultures. And let me frame what I mean by that. I'm not talking about illegal, immoral, unethical, right? Put those things aside. But, I've always believed that organizations that work well tell people who they are, not who they aspire to be, but who they are. So let's go to the Elon Musk situation. What he's trying to say is if you want to be happy and engaged and satisfied with your work here, this is who we are. I operate at 2:00. I work really hard. I want this. And there are tons of other places for you to work. If you talk about the Fortune 500, there are 499 other places to work. Right? That's the reality of the numbers. But you can't make me want to give you the workplace you want. The only thing I can do as an executive, and I'm throwing this out again, we won't always agree, but is to tell you who I am. And then you decide if this works for you. It's like a marriage. Any of our relationships, be they personal, intimate, friend relationships, whatever, work is a relationship. You've got to decide if this works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, there are other places to go. I can say I could see the argument. Again, I'm not advocating. I don't know that I necessarily have a point of view necessarily about Elon Musk's management style, but I do know that on 8 billion people on the planet, there are 10,000 of them who would love to work in that environment because that culture works for them. So the key word here is he's articulating the culture. This is not about judging who Elon Musk is. Remember, we have said forever, we just said a few minutes ago, we want people to bring their authentic selves to work. Well, guess what? He's just being authentic. And that's the irony here is people say, tell me, I want to bring my authentic self to work. Okay, well, he just did it. The problem is you don't like it. That's where the problem lies, right? Mm-hmm. It's both ways. There's a pretty compelling argument. Now, listen, do I think that we should try to have better work-life integration and that it shouldn't all be about the dollar and all about work? Sure. But the man told you this is the environment that you would be working in if you choose to work here. There's a lot to be said for that, Bob.
Yeah, no, it's a very fair point. And one of the things that you said there is Fortune 500. You tested my Tennessee math, but I think I got this one right. There's 499 other ones. But what I like about that is this notion of autonomy, freedom of choice. You do not have to work at Twitter. If you don't work at Twitter, that's cool. There's other places you can go. And as you say, he's being very authentic.
Yes,
for sure. Whether he's being empathetic or not, well, I don't know. If somebody loves that culture, they may find that very empathetic.
And a ton of people,
man, that's what I want. Yeah.
And a ton of, I worked at a law firm early in my career. Forgive me for that. But I started my career as a lawyer. And I remember this first week during the orientation at the firm, they said, listen, we run this firm to be profitable. We're not here to change the world. If you want to go do that, go to an organization, a nonprofit organization, and do what they do, mission and purpose. But we are here to make money. And I was like, wow, that's a little sobering. But I ultimately decided that day, works for me right now. Now, there's a point in my life when I do want more mission-oriented work, and then I'll go work somewhere else. And they expect the turn, and I understood. We just had an agreement about how we're going to work without judging the leaders of the business. They're going to pay me a certain amount of money, which, by the way, was a lot more than other people. So the trade-off was I wanted the money, and I was willing to do and live in that culture for some specified period of time. That worked to me. And in the process, what it was very, I felt stronger. I was controlling my career decisions. It wasn't happening to me. I was deciding that I was going to do it. And this was the exchange.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. And we're going to marry two ideas, which you said, hey, this is a business. We're here to make money. We're very upfront about that. But also the notion, back to our topic of empathetic leadership. And can those actually, they're not, you kind of said it in the preamble, which is these are not mutually exclusive ideas.
That's right. That's right.
And so just quickly, to kind of bridge to what I think is really a great example of this would be the CEO of Delta Airlines, Ed Bastian.
Yes.
And so, Ed would talk about a virtuous circle and taking care of frontline employees first. That's his priority. He's taking care of, he didn't say pilots. Well, maybe a little bit pilots, but it wasn't the customer. It wasn't the shareholder. It was take care of those people at ticket counters, flight attendants, the people doing the work of Delta and interacting with the customers. Because if those people are taken care of, then they're taking care of the customers, which means they get more business, which takes care of the stakeholders, shareholders, which feeds back into their ability to take even better care of the frontline employee. And, Delta, more than probably any other airline, emerged from the pandemic quite healthy on the back of that being the DNA of their culture.
And it is, you keep saying the word that I hope everyone's listening to, it's culture. At the end of the day, it's not empathy, it's not this, it's not that, it is culture. If you get culture right, businesses will thrive. I had the good fortune of interviewing Ed Bastian now a couple of weeks ago, as you know, at SHRM 23 in Las Vegas. And it was just really, really good to hear him talk about what has differentiated his airline from the other carriers. Listen, all of them are essentially doing the same thing. You get on a plane, you go to a different city. It's not that complicated at some level, the business model. But he said, it's very much about our culture. We focus primarily on our people, and we ask our people to focus on our customers, as opposed to, as you pointed out, us focusing on our customers. There's a step, a process to getting to customer loyalty, and they figured it out. It is, you first got to get employee loyalty. He understands, and he talked about in the middle of the pandemic, when literally their business went to zero. I was one of those. I was on an airplane, and there were more staff and flight crew than there were people flying the plane. And so we knew this was a bad proposition. And he said, he essentially said, he stopped and he said, what must I do at this point? Everyone's afraid of their lives, the loss of their lives because of COVID, but they're also afraid of the loss of their livelihoods. And so both of these things were happening at once. He, as the leader, decided, I'm going to pour into my people. I've got to, here I am, a multi-million-dollar CEO. I'm going to be okay for the foreseeable future. But my $20 an hour frontline employee may not be. And I've got to understand what their stressors are, what their experiences are, back to empathy, and then try my best to alleviate their concerns and assure them that they're going to get to the other side. That is great culture, and that's not mutually exclusive. And I think that's really, really important in leaders today, and it then makes for good business.
And as I've heard Ed talk about this, he tell the story of they were bleeding $100 million a day when their business went to zero, except for Johnny flying with them. Yeah. But they were bleeding $100 million a day. That's I can't even wrap my mind around that.
That's right.
And so empathetically, they knew that people were afraid. Right. But they couldn't fly. And so rather than do what 20 million, 30 million people losing their jobs, he said, no, you still have a job here, but here's where mutuality, we're going to help each other.
That's right.
So if you're willing to forego your salary until this thing starts to settle down, we will continue to offer your healthcare benefits, and you will have a job at Delta Airlines when this thing settles back down and we get back to whatever normal is going to look like. I think he said over half the employees took that deal.
That's right. That's
amazing. That's creativity. That's understanding the fear and the needs that his people had, and being very creative in coming up with a solution that got the airline what they needed, but also provided the employees with what they needed.
And he couldn't have done that. I love that story. I heard him tell the story, and he couldn't have done that on a dime. That had to be built into their culture for a very long time, because foundationally it requires trust. A CEO to say that in certain environments where people are like, oh, yeah, sure. So I'm going to step away, and you're going to guarantee my job, and you're going to take care of me when things come back. And then he said it was really important that as the business has come back, fairly strongly. I was in an airport the other day, and they are packed. These planes are packed right now. He then, right after that, started paying out significant bonuses. And it was really important for employees not just to hear you say when things get back to whatever the new abnormal is, when it comes back, that we're going to share in the profit. So right now, I'm asking for you to share in the not so pretty side of the economics of this business. But when things return back to a new normal, whatever that is, I'll then share that with you. And so writing big bonus checks, I love it when a CEO, because I have this experience, is excited about writing checks, giving people bonuses at the end of the year. That's where they are right now. And that has really become a part, core of their culture.
Yeah. So leadership basically is what feeds into creating the culture. And then the employee decides, is that a culture I want to be a part of? Is that the leader I want to follow or not? And everybody's got a choice.
And let me just go back to the contrast that you made between Elon Musk and Ed Bastian. I want to be really clear to anyone listening. I'm not saying, and I don't think you're saying, that one of them is a great leader and one's a bad leader. They're different, right? They're just different. And they will achieve different levels of success in different ways. And I, as a student of human resources and of people and leadership, am studying. I want to see long-term which one works out best. I'm not prepared to say who's right or wrong. I think I know what I like. I like the Ed Bastian approach a little bit better as a human being, and that's what I'd like to model as a leader. But I'm not prepared, and I think we all have to be prepared to say, but let's see how this all works out. There are a lot of people who run businesses into the ground over the long run too, right? So we have to be willing to test the idea, and it could be that they're both right, just in different ways. Yeah. That's what's so great about the WorkWire, is that I don't think our job is to say this is a bad leader and this is a good leader. They're different. And let's explore how they're different. And we'll see over time, we'll figure out how this all worked out.
Yeah, so thank you, because I think that you just nailed it, which is that's our goal here on the WorkWire. And we're going to start wrapping this first episode up, which I really have enjoyed our conversation, Johnny, but it's to explore the issue. And things aren't always quite as straightforward as they seem, to the good, to the bad, or just confusing. But how can we unpack these a little bit so that people can hopefully make more informed decisions for a work environment that best fits you?
And let me say just one thing before we go, Bob, because this is critical for me. I feel like I got to say, there's also situational leadership. There are times when you need to be more like an Elon Musk. And there are other times you need to be more like an Ed Bastian. It's situational. I think that's also critical as we explore this. We think there's some perfect way to be a leader at all times. And I don't hold that there's true. There's different types of leadership styles that you've got to pull out of your toolbox and use depending upon the circumstances. Again, this is all of why this thing is so complicated and at the same time wonderful and juicy to bite into.
Awesome. Well, Johnny, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our conversation. I hope you did as well. And look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the WorkWire.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit SHRM.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.